This is the Voice of Wichita Falls on NewsTalk 1290.
And welcome to this week's edition of the Voice of Wichita Falls. I'm your host, Mike Hendren, and my co-host here this morning is Henry Florsheim, president of the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce. Henry, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
We're getting some good feedback on the show from folks out there. People seem to be enjoying what we're doing here, so maybe we keep doing this for a while.
I think these are topics people want to hear about.
Yeah, I think they are too, definitely. Last week, we started talking a little bit about the bond issues that are going to be on the May 5th ballot, and we're going to continue that discussion this week. Someone brought this up to me the other day about the population, because I harp a lot about the stagnant population of this city and how flat we've been for 50, 60 years. We just don't seem to grow. And I mentioned, we've been around 100,000 people for decades now. And they said, Sheppard Air Force Base, you've got a civilian population, obviously, that works there, that lives in the area, that don't necessarily live in Wichita Falls, but they do come here to work. But how does, as far as the data that you have, the population of Sheppard Air Force Base and that student population, how does that really factor into our city population, or does it?
The transient students that come in for 6 weeks at a time or however long they're here, and then they're gone. If you're counting them in the population, our population would actually be bigger than 105,000 because those people are not counted in the census. They couldn't possibly be counted.
Right.
Permanent party and civilians that are, that are living here on what would we would call a permanent basis. Those are the people that are counted in the census count. And so 104,000 and change is our population. There is this interesting dynamic that we have these people coming in. It does bring up a point that we need to figure out how to take better advantage of those visitors while they're here, because economic development is any activity that grows wealth in this community,
right,
whether it's about jobs or not. And so if a tourist comes here and spends money, they leave that money here when they leave. That means there's more money in our economy than there was before. And the same exact thing goes for Sheppard. Mm-hmm. Other than the jobs, the biggest impact of Sheppard being here is the money that they spend in the community, whether that's buying office supplies or people spending money eating lunch in town, or all the other things that somebody spends money on when they're living somewhere, whether it's temporary or permanent.
A lot of, be it misinformation or misunderstanding, there's a lot of that out there.
A lot of both.
A lot of both out there. And the only way we combat that is to just keep talking about it and keep trying to educate people on what the facts are about what's really going on population-wise, what's really going on jobs-wise. Keep trying to re-educate people on what's going on, because they're given bad information by one person and they keep passing it along.
Well, rumors spread and rumors stick for a long time.
Unfortunately.
And, one of the ones that's been talked about a lot lately is Lake Wichita. The idea that I've heard that it was Sheppard, or I've heard that it was a private citizen came in and said, I'm going to dredge the lake for you for free if you just give me the dirt. Those stories are not true, but I've heard them 1,000 times.
Well, I have too. I've been hearing them since I was a kid, that this was going to that had happened here. It never happened. No. And I have questioned probably 24 people that were either current or former city officials, city councilors, mayors, people who worked for engineering and so forth. I've questioned all these people, like, did anything like this, is it even possible that ever happened? And they're like, no, it never happened.
And for any listeners who think maybe it did, who've heard those stories, there's no way anybody could come in and dredge for free.
Right.
To do what we're trying to do right now at the lake required a 404 permit from the Corps of Engineers, which cost several $100,000 to develop.
Yeah.
And so even if somebody did come up today and say, I'm going to do this for free, unless you're paying for all the design work and the entire study, it's not free.
Right.
And so there's just no way. It did not happen.
So we have to try at the same time trying to tamp down those rumors and trying to get the real information out there. There's a lot of talk, especially on Facebook, rants and raves.
It's so much fun.
I hate rants.
Hello, rants and raves.
I hate it.
We love you guys. Mike really loves you.
I hate it. It gives me a headache. I read it, and I'll even over the past weekend, I commented on a few things, and I regretted opening my mouth because some people you can't argue with, you just can't reason with. But there's a lot of people feel like, well, why can't the city just pay for all this stuff out of the general funds? Why can't they just tighten the belt enough to cover all this cost without coming to us for more?
Right.
Basically, because that's what the bond is. They're borrowing money to do this stuff. Where is the city's, as far as you know, where is the city's budget what kind of, what parameters are they operating under right now? Would it even be possible to do any of these projects without a bond by just making adjustments in the city's budget?
Great question. And the simple answer is their budget is very tight. Sales tax collections have not grown over the years. Right. However, the last 4 months in a row, they are up over last year, which is a good sign. It's not long enough to really be a trend that we can look at, but it's better than the alternative. But here's the situation. We've been working on the trail for how long? I don't know, 20 or 30 years?
87, I think, is when it actually started.
30 years.
So over 31 years.
Yeah, so 31 years. If we're happy with that sort of pace and don't care about finishing the trail for another 10 or 20 or 30 years, then sure. Some things can be done bit by bit with the general fund. And here's one I want to bring up because I hear quite a few people have said, well, the police or fire departments might be, they're concerned about their pay. And rightfully so. Right. There was a vote a couple of years ago to bring them up to the average, but the average is always shifting. And so if you don't keep up, it's an issue that we need to look at with all city staff if we expect them to hire the best and the brightest. However, what this proposal would actually do, take the police station, take Proposition D, which would be the new municipal center downtown. The police station needs a new roof within the next couple of years. We're talking about $500,000 or more. So if we pass this bond, then we can avoid those expenses that we'd have to put into, whether it's ADA restrooms or new roof or any of the other things that have to be done at the police station just to keep it viable. Right. If we build a new facility, then those things aren't an issue anymore. If we don't vote in Proposition D and we have to piecemeal the upgrades and renovations to the police station, where does that come from? The general fund? Well, where do raises come from? Same place. And so actually not voting this in could hurt chances for salary adjustments for police and fire and city staff way more than actually voting it in, because you'd have more money available in the general fund if we don't have to dedicate it to, these little Band-Aid fixes, like a new roof for the police department, a new roof for fire station number 1. So that's something people ought to think about. Yeah. Blaming your lack of support today on something government did 20 or 30 or 50 years ago or didn't do, it doesn't make sense, because today's elected officials and city leaders are not those people that were 50 years ago.
It doesn't fix the here and now.
And I bet you money, whether it's today or 50 years ago, if you came up to me and said, hey, Memorial Auditorium, we need to put $5 million into renovations just to make it stable, or I can put that money into raises. Everybody's going to say put it into raises. Right. And so the same thing happened back then. And people were making the best decisions that they could make at the time. Right. And unfortunately, sometimes buildings just get old. The auditorium especially, I love it, and it's beautiful, but it's on the side of a hill where a lake used to be. And it's great for the auditorium, although we still got to address things like restrooms in there. But for city office space, where we're expecting them to hire the best and brightest to work in that environment, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, among the bond issues, now last week I think we talked about the downtown streetscapes, and we talked about the municipal complex. Right. Is there another one this week you'd like to focus on in particular among these that we're talking about?
So let's talk about quality of life a little bit more, and let's revisit the backstory for just a second. So we have felt like our population was either stable or stagnant or whatever you call it for the last 50 years. I don't know. Well, we've been looking at the figures, and we talked about this in the first show, is that we're starting to lose population at all of the age brackets under 55. And so as people retire, we don't have people to replace them in the workforce. And at some point, as our older citizens start dying, we're not going to have the population taking their place. And so we've got to figure out how to grow the talent pool. And one ways we grow our own. But one of the other key ways to do that is become a city where more people are willing to stay and more people are willing to move to, and that means quality of life. When somebody looks at a city to move to, there are really typically 4 things they're always looking at, and those are housing, schools, downtown, and what is there to do in the city in general. And so a lot of that has to do with recreation, outdoor activities. And this trail is a huge asset, whether you use it or not. It's a big deal. And to have a circle trail that goes all the way around the city and has dozens of different types of landscapes and vistas you can go through and connects downtown to campus and all these different points in between, Lake Wichita, that's a big quality of life issue. and people love that. And so Propositions A and B together would completely finish the trail and build a spur from the old Ohio Street Bridge all the way to the main gate at Shepherd Air Force Base, and build a spur from the trail at Taft and Southwest Parkway up to Sykes Lake. And so we would not only finish the trail, but we'd be providing a connection to two of our biggest populations, MSU students and airmen at Shepherd Air Force Base, to give them access now to the entire city using that trail. Gets them off the streets. They don't have to drive, so it relieves congestion. And it's a big-time tourism and quality of life issue. And so if we vote on A and B together, if they both pass, we finish the trail.
And some of those students can't drive because of the phase that they're in training.
Right.
They're not allowed to drive.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything they're doing is either on the bus or on foot.
And there's plenty of people that have bikes out at the base. And there's also been talk of somebody coming in with one of those bike share services to where you could have a station at Shepherd, one downtown, maybe one by the mall, where people could just borrow bikes and take them to that next station. And it's happening in other cities all over the world right now. And again, this is one of those scenarios where we can have this stuff in Wichita Falls if we just decide we want it bad enough. Or we just look back and say, this is just Wichita Falls. Nothing's going to change. And if we vote that way, that's still not true. We'll get worse.
Kind of a sidebar here. There was a story last week about the city of El Paso. Now, El Paso is 6 times the size of Wichita Falls. It's a big city. But they're building a cable car system in downtown El Paso.
Interesting.
They're actually going to eliminate a bus route. The money that was budgeted for that bus route will go toward the cable car. And I think they did a bond issue for this thing. But it's interesting that that's coming back. I mean, you don't imagine in the 21st century, the year 2018, that cable cars are coming back into fashion anywhere. And
it's a quality of life issue, and it's a traffic congestion issue. And if the people there decide they want it, they get it. Just exactly the same way here. If we want a good trail, if we want a great downtown or all these other things, we can have it. We just got to vote yes.
And interestingly enough, Wichita Falls, for those that don't know, many years ago, we had a cable car system in Wichita Falls that actually took you all the way out to Lake Wichita.
I've heard
I believe.
That. I've seen pictures and the parties at the pavilion and all. That's a really neat dynamic.
Yeah, and that went on from the early 1900s, I think, through the 20s, maybe the early to mid 30s even. So for a number of years, we had that. Now, could Wichita Falls support a cable car system? Would we vote for such a thing as that? I don't know. That's a whole other dream project for down the line. We got a lot of other things we need to do first and fix first and get right first, obviously. So, what other on the bond issues? What other issue do you think we need to?
So Proposition C is streets, and this is probably a no-brainer. I say probably because I've learned to never assume anything. But does a couple of specific projects, which is does the Maplewood extension from Lawrence Road by Walmart to McNeil, which would really transform traffic patterns in that area. Yeah. If you're coming from the west and you could get off Kell at McNeil or come up Caulfield to McNeil, instead of having to come to Lawrence Road, to get to Walmart, that relieves a lot of congestion. Or if you go into Academy or that shopping center, you could just hop across Lawrence instead of having to drive on it, and that keeps people off of some of our busiest intersections in town.
Right.
Then there's also a Taft expansion, which would run, if you're going south on Taft from MSU, you cross over Southwest Parkway, and then it becomes 2-lane all the way to Kemp, where it ends. This proposition would 4-lane that and build all the drainage infrastructure that they need in that area as well. Right. It's a real narrow road in a lot on places. Yeah. And so I was driving over there yesterday to take some pictures for my presentations, and when you've got 2 big trucks going on either side, and I mean big pickups, not like cargo trucks, somebody's got to get on the shoulder to pass. It's so narrow in places, and it's highly trafficked because of the neighborhoods back there and because it is a cut through. And so that's a project the city had identified as a priority.
And I've often wondered about that, why that was so narrow right through there.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just, to me, it never made sense.
It was probably built that way before there were as many houses there.
Yeah, but I mean, with the growth that we've seen in this area of town, the number of people moving and living in that area, in and around Midwestern and in that particular area, Taft, it just doesn't make any sense to have it so small.
It might have been on the city's priority list for 20 years to upgrade, and it just didn't get to the top of the list.
Never got there.
But that's 2. And then the third part is it would of the $17 million in that Proposition C, 11 of it would go to the city's existing street program. So right now, the city of Wichita Falls can allocate maybe $2.5 million a year towards road projects. And then staff and council get together and they figure out priorities, what they're going to spend that $2.5 million on. So you add an additional $11 million to that pot of money, they'll be able to fund 5 times or so as many road projects in this year, not get them all done, but to fund them now.
Right.
If you've got a project that's one of your pet peeves, that's near your house or whatever it is, that's on the list, but it's 3 or 4 or 5 down, well, they might be able to get to it this year or next year instead of waiting 5 years to get to it. And so that'll just help us advance our priorities a little bit and get some projects done that we can't afford to do today.
And call me crazy, but I don't think we're throwing enough money at that.
No, you're right.
The road situation needs a lot more money thrown at it. Now I get it. It could be 2.5, 3 times that amount of money to do every single thing that needs to be done. But I look at some of the streets in Wichita Falls and I realize, we've patched them. We've just band-aided them through. You can tell for decades we haven't really done anything major to these roads.
Right.
And that's something I think in the very near future, and by near future I mean probably within 5 years, we're going to have to come back and address that again.
And the only way to ensure that we can do it without having to go to a bond every time is to do the things that will increase sales tax collections in this city.
Right.
That means get more people here spending money on weekends and get more people to move here. And so it's not that we just need to stop spending on something else. There's this balance here. And so if we think downtown and trails and schools and all these other things can help get more people here, sales tax collections will go up. And then the city can spend more on roads every year and not just once because we decided to vote yes.
Right. With the sales tax collections, and I mean, aside from the bond issues, I mean, we've talked about what we can do with some of these things. But aside from that, what can we do? I guess more importantly, what can business people do in the city to try to draw more people in? I mean, obviously, call me biased, advertise a little bit. Spend some money to tell people who you are, where you are, and why they should come and trade with you. That's a big help. But aside from that, what could business people in Wichita Falls do to help improve that? What
obviously, shopping local whenever possible is an easy way to do it. But I also know that if you're in business, you've got this deep desire to shop local, but at the same time, if your profit margin is very narrow, and you can get something cheaper out of town, that's a hard decision to make.
Sure.
And so just realistically, the number one thing we can do as a community is to support those things that will get more people to spend their money here.
Right.
And that's why tourism is so attractive to a lot of cities, because you don't have to worry about creating job opportunities to get tourists here. That's a different dynamic when you're trying to get people to move here. But if you can give people a cool experience for a weekend, think about it. We've got 8 million or more people living within a couple hours of here. If we have a great downtown district or tons of recreational opportunities or good sports complexes or tons of stuff to do, those people will come here to experience that just like we'll go there. And when they're here, they're spending money at all these different businesses that collect sales tax on those purchases, submitting it to the city, and the city then has more money to do things.
Yeah. I would love to see not just our downtown, but all of our city develop in such a way that people do want to come here, that it does look, it's something they want to come and do. And before people scoff at the idea that someone from Fort Worth would want to come to Wichita Falls to spend a day or a weekend, look at it this way. Just as you get tired of spending all your time here and you want to go there, don't you think they get tired of spending all their time in Fort Worth or Dallas and they want to go somewhere else?
And just because they live there doesn't mean they enjoy the traffic congestion.
Oh, my
So to
gosh.
be able to get out of town for a weekend and be in a place that is not like that is very attractive.
Get away from that insanity.
Yeah, it's attractive to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up the idea of the whole city, right? So I get questions a lot. Why is the city only supporting downtown and not the rest of the city? And this is the subject of my weekly email to our members. It's called Chamber Chatters, about the city's done plenty and continues to do projects all over town. If you think about economic development projects, we've got stuff in the past couple of years and things going on now up on 44, down near the business park, on the southwest side of town. There's road projects all over the place. The focus on downtown is to improve that quality of life and make us a city where more people want to be. That's why you've got an emphasis on downtown. Like it or not, that's reality. You know, people don't drive 2 hours away very often just because there's a good shopping center, right? They want that authentic historic district where you can walk around and feel comfortable and it's nice and attractive. And there's dozens of shops and restaurants and bars and stores and museums and attractions that you can do all at once. It's just what people want. Right. And so, like it or not, there has to be that extra focus on downtown if we're going to be a great city. But at the same time, the city's doing stuff all over this community and will continue to, and we know it. And so I like to point that out every once in a while. You know, the city's invested money in Lake Wichita. They've invested money in roads projects. And then if these propositions pass, there are additional projects all over the city that'll happen as well.
One of the discussions I had in the last week with somebody, we went on, this guy and I went back and forth for an hour about this, and you and I have talked about it, not just on this show, but on my morning show, Wake Up Call, and other places we've talked about it. And that is the employment situation here, employee situation here, the employment pool.
Right.
And another local business that has left here recently, one of the reasons they cited to me as they're leaving was not being able to find an adequate amount of help. You know, the gentleman's words to me were, I don't hire clerks. I need to hire salespeople. And we don't have enough people here with the skill set to do that. You know, we need salespeople, and we're just not finding them here.
Our talent pool is shrinking. That's the biggest danger to our economy. It's not high taxes. It's not water. The single biggest threat to our economy, because this affects every business, is not being able to find enough workforce. Growing our talent pool is the future of this community. It's not recruiting more companies. We'll continue to do that. But think about it like this. We bring in a new company that's going to hire 100 people. Where are they going to come from? They're going to take them from existing companies, because there's not a huge pool of unemployed people out there to take these skilled positions. So if 100 people leave these companies to go work for this company, did our economy really grow much? No, it only grew by whatever money that company is spending in town on supplies and construction and stuff like that. And so the real secret here, and it shouldn't be a secret, but the real secret here is we've got to grow the workforce, and that has to be the number one priority. And that, again, that goes back to why things like the CEC Center are so important. And things like downtown are so important. Those are the things that help us grow more workers here and help attract more people from elsewhere.
Let's just let's dream big here. Let's say that a company like Amazon needs a new warehouse. They need a new hub, and we manage to recruit them to Wichita Falls. Can you do that on the hope or the idea that, okay, we may not have the 300 people here you're going to need to hire, for example, for that warehouse, but they're going to follow you here. They're going to find out, hey, Amazon's opening a place in Wichita Falls, Texas. Let's, and they're going to be paying, those are good paying jobs.
Right.
Usually people are going to move here and follow them here for the job. Does that concept hold water?
It doesn't, and not for the entire headquarters, and not just for some sort of a distribution.
So why is that one does not work?
Well, it doesn't. Think about it like this: if you're a company, and you're going to have all these startup challenges for a new facility, okay, construction challenges, getting accustomed to a new community, workforce is the biggest issue, and so. Why would you go someplace? Think about it. To hire qualified people, you may have to interview 10, 20, 30 candidates to find the right one you want. So if you're hiring 300 people now, you've got to interview 10,000 candidates just to get those 300. And so to screen 10,000, to get good 10,000 passable candidates you're going to interview, how many do you have to screen by phone interviews and resumes? If you're doing it in a city where the workforce currently isn't, that makes it even harder because you can't visit with those people. And so it just makes sense. That's the reason one of their criteria for their headquarters was you got to have a certain level of population. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for us. And the same goes for any company. I can give you $10 million tomorrow, and if you can't find the workforce, your decision is going to be to go to some other city because you will never be successful here. Now, if you've got a workforce that may not be big enough, but you've got people that are suited for a certain type of job, and there are training programs in place that address that, maybe. Maybe. But in general, it just wouldn't make sense for a company to do that. They're going to go where they can go hire a bunch of people now. USA 800 is a good example. When they came in a year and a half ago, they projected over 3 years they were going to hire 600 to 700 people. And they thought the first year would be 100, 200 maybe. Well, they had a couple of job fairs the first week they were here back in August of 16, and they hired over 300 people in 2 weeks. And so for them, the workforce was here, readily available. It was easy for them to find people. And so now they're well over 500 people now. And so for that sort of operation at that time in history, it made a lot of sense because they didn't have to worry. But if you're hiring people that aren't here today, that's just too big a risk for any business. So they're going to go somewhere else.
Bottom line, we've got to get more families to move here, more people to move here. We've got to increase the population of the city.
It's the most important.
We just have to, because the only way we're going to increase our tax base, the only way we're going to, one of the things I talked about on my show last week was, we have some beautiful homes here. You can buy a beautiful home in Wichita Falls for $250,000, a really nice house. Okay. And we've got a lot of $250,000, $300,000, even $400,000 and $500,000 homes, really nice homes with lots of amenities. Well, if people are not moving into our city, then who's buying those homes? Well, it seems logical that it's people who are upgrading. The person that's been living in the $150,000 home for 20 years, now suddenly they can afford the $300,000 house, so they're going to go buy the $300,000 house. Well, then they got to try to sell their $150,000 home. Okay, so maybe the guy that lives in the $80,000 house upgrades to the $150,000 house. But at what point do you start to run out of people that need to upgrade? Well, then your housing market starts to hurt and suffer as a result of that, because you're not bringing new people in that need to buy homes. People aren't coming here to buy homes. So then eventually your housing market starts to suffer. What is the danger of us running into that pitfall?
And we may be there already, although I have seen a little more activity from the home builders than I've seen in past years. The last couple of years have been pretty decent. But everything builds upon itself or falls around itself, right? Because if there's not people buying new homes, that means the home builders are making less money, so the subcontractors are making less money, the furniture companies are making less money, and concrete and everything else. And so at some point, a business closes, then the money they used to spend with another company is gone. And so it's you talk about trickle down. That's a trickle down economy right there. When you're talking about something negative happening. Yeah, it's a big deal. I know we're going to have to wrap up here in a minute. I did want to mention something real quick.
Let's do it.
If anybody is looking for more information about the May 5th election or needs info on the individual propositions, how to vote, why they were chosen, and that sort of thing, we've developed a website, fallsfuture.com, where you can find all the information, including info about an event we're going to have on April 19th to showcase all of these things.
Right.
So fallsfuture.com.
Yeah. And you're going to chamber events and different businesses. You're addressing this. You're getting in front of a lot of people and talking about this.
I am. I've got probably 40 presentations scheduled between now and May 5th. And so if you want to learn more, if you want me to come out and give a presentation to your company, the employees there, or a civic club that you're in, or church group, or your family, or bunco night, anything, I don't care. Let me know, because this is our life between now and May 5th. We're going to be doing everything we can to get the word out. So just call me at the chamber at 723-2741, or you can go to fallsfuture.com and just click on the email link to contact us, and that goes to me. And so I'll reply to you, and we'll set up a time.
All right. Henry Florsheim, thanks for being here. We'll
Thank you,
get
Mike.
together and do it again next week. Thanks once again for joining us for the Voice of Wichita Falls.